Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night for everyone. I'm so happy to be here today with you to welcome you all to this session, especially to Okech. Welcome to this. You will be the lecturer to Women in SMEs. I just want to let you know, fellows, that why we have this program for women in SMEs. I mean that because as a politician, as a leader, next, you need to have in financial independency. And Mrs. Okech will tell us she's very expert in empowering women in SMEs. I mean entrepreneurship. So we welcome you. Without further ado, I would really love to have you, Ms. Okech, and thank you for your time and availability to lecture this session today. Thank you, Okech. Please, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nurhayati alias Asagaf. Also, another thing before we start the session, we would like to take a picture together. So everyone, I hope we can open the camera if you don't mind. Thank you. So now say cheese. Okay, thank you. Okay, next. Okay, Mrs. Okech, this entire session is scheduled until for around 1.5 hours. Would you prefer the question to be done at the end of the presentation or you would like, is it okay for you to be interrupted in the middle of the presentation? Okay.
There'll be sessions where we can be,
okay.
There will be some group session for questions. So it will be an interactive session where at different levels, we should be able to ensure that everybody is able to engage holistically.
Okay.
I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. The work that I'm going to look at is as a member of the board of Nuraa Women's Institute is on the issues of women in small, medium enterprises and looking at how then we engage in sustainable development. It is a session where you can also just interrupt or stop me because sometimes I speak fast. So if I am too fast, please tell me to slow down. So when we look at this particular one, I look at our context in Kenya, but then I will also look at the context in the world view and at different levels on what is happening and anchoring it to what we're calling the Sustainable Development Goals, which we are looking at within this particular decade. I look at this one and we say that at different levels, there are different types of economies, and we want different people to be able to participate and inclusively participate in small to medium enterprises, looking at how then we are able to participate at a collective level with different people, which is inclusive also with those with disability and other minority and marginalized groups. When we look at the issues of the SDG, and we say that the SDG 5, which looks at the issues of gender equality, and the SDG 8, that is the Sustainable Development Goal 8, it looks at the issues of participation and the issues of participating and also economic rights. And we look at that the SDG 5 talks about looking at under 5A, looking at reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources, as well as access to ownership and control over land and other forms of property, financial services, inheritance and national resources, and in accordance with the national laws, which are also anchored in the international and regional laws. And it also looks at enhancing the use of enabling technology, in particular, the information and communication technology to promote the empowerment of women. So when we look at this one, we'll be looking at, as we go along, what are the opportunities which then are going to be enabling us to participate in looking at economic empowerment through small to medium-term enterprises using also technology. And then when we look at the target, the one on goal number 8, when we look at the target number 8.2, it looks at how we can diversify, innovate, and upgrade for economic productivity. And this one ensures that we are able to achieve higher levels of economic productivity through diversification, technological upgrading, and innovation, including through focus on high value added and labor-intensive sectors. This is going to be very key as we look at where women are in the processes of production. And you look at where many women work, particularly in agricultural sectors, where a number of our economies are, you find that they are at the bottom level in terms of labor intensive. But when you're looking at the higher level where high value added, many women do not participate at that particular level. And it gives us an opportunity to start looking at how, at the different levels where we are, we can focus at all forms of participation at all levels. The other bit where we look at is the target 8.3, which looks at the issues of policies that support job creation and growing enterprises. The SDGs are very key where governments have signed on to. And that means that when you're talking about the issues of policies, we'll also be looking at whether the tax policies within our countries are enabling to support women, small to medium-time enterprises to get access to resources, and how then, apart from the resources which come from the public sector in the different countries, that is in government, there's also resources which come from the private sector, and how these ones can enable decent job creation, can enable entrepreneurship, can enable creativity and innovation. And this one should also encourage formalization and growth of small to micro and medium-term enterprises through access to financial services. Some of the challenges which women experience to get access to finances are also different across the different countries, but you find that some of the bigger resources which are required cannot be accessed by many women who are in enterprises because for the collaterals, which then sometimes women are asked for, which they may not be able to have, or the challenges which then you are asked to get other people to sign off for you on a certain level of loan, which then does not allow you to get access to bigger loans. Some do, some enterprises do, and if those enterprises are here, it is also going to be important for us to share how this one works across the different spaces. When we are looking at the level of the gender agenda as economic empowerment tool in promoting the decent work in small to medium enterprises, we talk about that under United Nations Industrial Development Organization, the strengthening of women's enterprises is a human right and economic and environmental imperative. We cannot do all this development if we do not deal with the gender disparities in the entrepreneurship spaces. So if you look at the cultural discrimination and practices in some of our communities, we need to be able to think that men and boys, women and girls are influenced by these inequalities, which create burdens to either gender at different levels. When we look at how we must ensure decent work, we look at this in terms of how we can look at how the diminishing pay gap and how to strengthen women's businesses for them to make sense. And this one, when we look at how UNIDO speaks about it, the lifetime earnings between women and men within the different countries shows that we are losing $172 trillion in wealth. And this means that if women were earning as much as men in the countries where we are, and if human capital wealth could increase by just about 1/5 globally, then we would be able to contribute to ensuring that our countries are sustainably wealthy and that the households which then suffer from poverty can then be engaged on. At this level, I want to ask for us to also just ask ourselves within the groups where we are. And within these particular groups, it is just going to take a small session for us to talk about that. Are we able to list down the resources which are available for women, small to medium enterprises in your countries? And how accessible are they for different small to medium enterprises? How many of these women businesses are principal owners? As a principal owner, you have better decision making. You're able to ensure that you influence the resources which come to your space without having people questioning you about whether you are adequately prepared, because you will have thought out a better plan for this. And then the also other question we can ask ourselves is that how many SMEs in your countries have women as top managers, and how many are run and managed by women, and what is their profitability? And then when we think of SMEs, do we also think of women in the informal sector? This should take us just as a brainstorming session. And if we can be able to have this conversation within the next 5 minutes, then we shall be able to start off questioning ourselves and then challenging ourselves in these particular spaces. Are we able to start these particular questions? Who can answer question 1? We have 25 people in the room. And if you're able to answer some of these questions, then we'll be able to start thinking about what we want to do with SMEs, both in the private and the public sector. This is an open session. If you can be able to answer. I'm not able to see, but if people can lift their hands and speak, as you speak, you can say who you are, then we'll be able to engage at a different level after that.
Okay. Okech to, to let anybody think about it first, but I want to have, because in Nuraa, to announce this, in Nuraa Women Institute, we do have Nuraa Women Business Forum, which we're going to join the big festival, which we call Indonesia Syariah Economic Festival, starting from 30 October, the 30th of October this month to November 3 in Jakarta, November 3rd in Jakarta Convention Center. So when you are in Jakarta, have anybody, the fellows in Jakarta, please come and join. See the two booths that we have, one from community, Nuraa Women Institute, and another one, Nuraa Women Business Forum. So, I mean that Nuraa itself has a business forum. Okay, so we do have this one. Okay. Okay, so anybody can, yes, of course.
Yes. I'm seeing Racy.
Yes. So am I allowed to go on with my contribution?
Yes. Please do.
Okay, my name is Rose Resiato from Kenya, a member of the Kenya Network of Women and Girls with Disabilities. I'm a woman with physical disability, and I would like to share some of the various resources that can be accessed by women in business in Kenya, and majority of them are government programs and funds, and one of them is the Women Enterprise Fund, which is a government initiative that provides accessible and affordable credit to women entrepreneurs to support their businesses. And then we have the Wezo Fund, and this one also, it offers interest-free loans to youth, women, and persons with disabilities. And we also have another one, which is usually, currently, many women with disabilities, youths are encouraged to apply, and it is the access to government procurement opportunities, which is AGPO. And this one facilitates the participation of women, youth, and persons with disabilities in public procurement they are given a reservation of 30% for these groups. And we also have financial institutions and microfinance. And this institution, the one which is widely known in Kenya, is the Kenya Women Microfinance Bank, which specializes in providing financial services to women. We also have the Equity Bank Fanikisha Initiative, and so many other banks, even KCB Bank, which is the Kenya Commercial Bank. Yeah. So I think those are just the few which I know from Kenya.
Thank you. Is there any other country, one other country just to share? You can see that there are opportunities, at least in Kenya, there are a variety. And for any other country, you'd be able to ask, what is the profitability of the SMEs run and managed by women in your country? Just 2 minutes so that we can go ahead. Is there any other country apart from Kenya and Indonesia?
Come on, fellows. You have to start speak.
And if there's none that you're aware of, that is why this fellowship is here. Because then if you are unaware, then this is what we'll be learning and ensuring that we can look at the mapping of what we have in our country so that we can tap into them. Anyone from any other country?
Yes.
Just a minute. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Susri Adeni from Indonesia. But unfortunately, I will not be able to answer all these questions. Probably only one I choose. If I go to the question number 2, like how many of businesses have women as principal owners? I think in Indonesia it's quite a lot at the moment, especially after the COVID-19. Seems that women try to work also and having entrepreneur and trying to help the family, so they have their own business. I have some friends who sell clothes, and they have their own businesses, and they are become principal of their business. So I think it's quite a lot, and I cannot count how many there are. And also probably I'm not really quite sure about this sector actually, but when I did a research about ICT for the women empowerment at the coastal area in Indonesia, especially in West Java, there are quite a lot number of women have a business in their coastal area. So they're also using ICT to help them and to be empowered by promoting and producing their businesses. I think that's all as far as I know, and it's also my research interest also about women on ICT. And as I noted on your previous slide, you also work on how that woman to be empowered by using ICT in Kenya. And I would like to hear about it because it's really kind of concern of my research as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to this slide before we close, so that then we are able to engage. Unless, but Balkisa, you have one thing which you want to add?
Yes, I'm Balkisa from Cameroon. And generally in my country, women are more invested in the informal sector in general, because mainly in the agricultural sector. So they are doing pretty much in the transformation of agricultural products and also in handcrafts. So these are the main sectors where women are really engaged, I would say.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to this slide as we go, before we close, so that we can also start thinking that what then do we need to do as we look at these particular questions when we are going back, when we finish this particular engagement. When we look at this, we are saying that it is critical to ensure that the work women and men are doing at the different levels, when you're talking about the issues of the informal sector, it's important that it is showcased that they contribute to the economy. Usually when we are looking at how much the informal sector is contributing to the economy, you will also be able to tell us whether the Kenya National Bureau, for us, we have the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. In your country, the Bureau of Statistics, do they actually look at what these women in the informal sector are contributing to? Because they're effectively contributing and support critical sectors in terms of how they're engaging. So this categorization of work of women within these particular different spaces, both the informal and informal, is something which we need to look at. And we need to look at how our Bureau of Statistics within our countries are able to measure how much they contribute. And then the tax person, for example, in Kenya, we have the Kenya, the taxpayer, the Kenya Revenue Authority. So your revenue authorities, how are your revenue authorities measuring this contribution? Or is tax similar? Is the tax similar to everyone? Or are there different ways in which when you contribute to the economy, you can have certain tax rebates? And then we look at that when these rebates are also being done holistically, that women in SMEs contribute to the GDP through tariffs, as was earlier said, levied by government, because everybody pays for these particular tariffs, whether you're at the national level or within the sub-national level. That means that within the different regions where you come from, there's something which is levied, for example, the taxes which when you're having a shop, or even if it's a kiosk, there's something which that local government authority levies. So when you contribute to this one, there needs to be a return on the investment which you're contributing. And we're looking at how then the places where we are is ensuring, promoting inclusive and sustainable economic growth, because the work that SMEs do and the work that the informal sector does contributes to decent work for all, and also contributes to promoting sustainable industrialization, but also fostering innovation. The kind of things we see in the informal sector on innovation are things which grow economies, and we need to start taking stock that how is this contributing to the different levels, and what is it that we can say that in terms of the equitable contribution of women within the different spaces, this is what we can talk about in the agenda. The other bit is that when we look at the different policies within the international and also within the international framework, we look at how the SMEs in the least developed countries are impeded by persistent and acute development challenges. And this includes the issues of high levels of poverty, which has increased because of the different challenges which we have been able to see. And we are looking at that at these particular levels. For example, people mentioned COVID. This has ensured that there are businesses which closed and have never opened. And how then do people get back? There's also deficient infrastructure for those who are in many agricultural spaces like Cameroon, for example, and also in Kenya, for example. When we look at the deficient infrastructure for women who are in agriculture, it ensures that you're not able to ensure that you have a return on investment in the output which you have at your farm. And this one ensures that certain SMEs would have been producing better, having more profits, but if they can't have infrastructure which gets their products to markets on time, then the products lose value. We look at the limited productive capacities. Are the industries which you have able to transform whatever is produced into goods, which then can be sold not only within your country, but also outside your country. And this limited productive capacities also ensures that when you take the goods for processing, it becomes very costly. For areas where there's high electricity costs, it then ensures that we have a challenge. One of the challenges which we're having is also how there is capture of certain industries where somebody who is in a formal sector then takes charge of all the infrastructure for producing power. So even when you're looking at how then you can produce power, and even if you want to go green in terms of the issues of solar, the cost of producing power to generate productivity in the industries has become a challenge. And then training labor force. There's low skilled labor force at different levels. And this one, further to this labor force, if you want to engage with them, the training costs sometimes becomes a burden to the person who owns the SME, because you train and then someone poaches. You train and someone takes them away. So the cost of training can be a challenge to a number of people, but that means that you contribute to skilled labor at different levels. And then the limited access to productive resources and technology, which was also asked earlier, and how then we can look at how we can leverage on the opportunities for technology, the opportunities which are there through the public service on ensuring that we can get ICT centers. In Kenya, it is something which has been tried by the government but has not worked yet holistically, but also working with innovation hubs to ensure that the ICT and the technology can be harnessed. This one is useful in terms of trade. And one of the things I'll mention here is, for example, in Kenya, what worked was what is called the M-Pesa. The M-Pesa system is ensuring that you can have money, online transaction, and use your phone. So you do not have to have, it's a cashless system. So in the different countries where we have those innovative technologies are some things which then can ensure that you can optimize. But the challenges which also come is that government is also coming to pay tax on certain innovation. And then inadequate opportunities for education is also ensuring that SMEs are not as productive as they ought to be. The global crisis is also something which we need to think about. When we look at the issues of the global crisis, you are able to see that when we had the economic meltdown right after COVID, and then there have been stringent financing frameworks for our governments who have IMF loans and World Bank. This is money is the challenges which we are facing within the global financial crisis, the pandemics which have affected the different countries. And then this is coupled by governments now having to pay IMF and World Bank loans. It is creating a lot of burden to women-led SMEs because you have not yet reached the level in which you need to reach to be competitive. And right now, there are more taxes, either taxes which are direct from your taxes on turnover tax, which then they look at it is increased. And part of those taxes, then there are other levies which then are which have to come out. There's increased costs in electricity to ensure that governments are able to pay off their loans. And this is a challenge. How then do we want to reflect on how to participate effectively to ensure that we get tax justice and ensure that the resources that are allocated that should directly benefit through direct access to finance are able to curb the unmet financing needs. So that means that financing facilities should not also have extreme return on investment. That when you are taking a loan, is that loan friendly, or is it a loan which then ensure that if you take a loan, then it means that your business will be closed when the banks or other financing facilities come back because the return rate on what you borrowed is extremely high. We also must look at the matching needs of the small to medium-term enterprises. So when you're looking at this matching need, in the different countries, you'll be able to tell us that what are the regulatory and policy frameworks that must be created to ensure that there are enabling environments to access finance. if those tax justice works, then it means that financing facilities must be able to respond, and the regulatory body, which is, for example, in Kenya on the issues of loans, on the issues of the rates on exchange, foreign exchange, should be able to be reviewed so that we do not have runaway high rates of exchange, which ensure that it's very expensive to even import goods which you need for your businesses. So we really need to participate at this particular level. And I will ask at this particular level that how many even participate in looking at whether your government is increasing tax and what is the tax being increased, whether we look at the finance bills of our different governments, because this finance bill creates taxes which then affect our businesses. And that means that it affects your businesses, who you run. It will increase the cost of doing businesses and reduce the cost of purchasing, the purchasing level of the people who frequent your business. So those are questions which we need to think about. And then we look at how then, when we are looking at meeting the needs of SMEs, how to improve the credit infrastructure, which includes how then you are not supposed to be declared insolvent when you are not able to pay back whatever your access to credit. And we have to look at how then we must work with financing facilities to have increased access to unsecured credit. And in Kenya, for example, this is something which we have seen opening up. It would be something which would be interesting to see from the other countries present here, that how many are able to access unsecured credit, where you're not being told in a certain country, bring your logbook, for example, or please bring your title deed, or do something which then makes you not able to access this credit. So unsecured credit is something which needs to be looked into. The e-lending platforms, which have seen increased access, is important. In Kenya, we have talked about the M-Pesa, which then has a new app, which is called M-Shwari. And M-Shwari is able to enable you to get resources. Different banks are also partnering with these e-lending platforms. But the caution which you need to have is some of these e-lending platforms are terrible places to get resources. Because when you get resources, they have access to all your details. When someone was asking about the issues of access to technical platforms, they are able to get access to all your details. There's no data privacy, and it has seen people having difficult periods when you default on a loan, when they're calling all your family members, when they're calling also all your workmates and anybody else where they can access through the lending platforms. So part of this is that the issues of data security and data privacy, and how within certain countries, there's also been a law to ensure that this does not happen. When we think about, is it doom, gloom, or there's a ray of hope on the landscape for growth for SMEs? It is improving, so it is not all doom and gloom. And it is also important to note that despite what we have come through as a whole world in the economic crisis faced, there are many opportunities which are now abound to ensure that your different SMEs can move. And now it is time for us to start thinking of how we plan. We have to think of how we want to focus and how we want to tap into the space that catapults the SMEs to engage in different ways of ensuring financial inclusion, and then the dedicated financing frameworks for women in SMEs. Those frameworks exist. What we need to do is to ensure there's a map for the same. The landscape for growth is possible, and we are looking at that there's equity finance. Different institutions are able to give equity finance, and financing facilities have done this and have seen SMEs grow. You'll also want to hear from the team who is here, how many have actually gotten equity finance? How many have gotten credit for startups? There are banks and other credit facilities which give credit for startups and even credit for services. We're also looking for credit for manufacturing. There are all these facilities which exist. Are we aware of them in our countries? If not, we need to do a map which looks at how then we can get these different frameworks which finance. There are also those institutions from the private sector, and also from the civil society, who ensure that they can provide resources for incubators to ensure innovation. The issue of the incubators to ensure innovation is something which is very key, so that then we are able to tap into those particular resources, because then you can co-create with a partner. But as we are looking at this co-creation, the issues of the legal frameworks of intellectual property rights is also something which we need to think about. And then looking at those particular partners who are also looking at accelerators to upscale what exists. The landscape for the SMEs is open up to invest. So there are different economies. There's a circular economy, there's a red economy. I will talk about the one which is vibrant at this particular moment, which is called the blue economy. And it is defined by the work people are doing within the fisheries and aquaculture. We are talking about maritime transport and logistics services. We are talking about the issues of culture and tourism. And we're talking about extractives, oil and gas, minerals and energy. There are other economies like the green economy, where we talk about the issues of the agriculture and how then people can participate in agricultural spaces at different levels, whether you are talking about setting up the factories, which then you are able to then engage within the green economy for processing, the different ways in which SMEs are open to investment. So one of the things is that in our investment map, which areas are people investing in? And as they're talking about investors, for women SMEs, we also have to look at investment which is not punitive, investment which is not extractive, investment which does not ensure that at the different levels, social fabrics also then are ruptured within those particular communities where things work. So those are some of the things when you're looking at who are investors, what are those investors bringing? It is also an opportunity for us to think about that as women SMEs, we want investment which then ensures that there's exploitation in the workplace. Is it investment which encourages exploitation of the communities where these investors come from? Is it investment which displaces people? Those are investments which then we need to think about as SMEs and think that is it what we are doing right, or is it investment which we can pass? So when we look at the issues of investment contributing to youth and gender development index, dignity and decent work is something which is key. It must also look at that when we look at women-led SMEs in the economic landscape, as I've said earlier, protection from all forms of violence is something which we are looking at in these SMEs, whether you're in the farm, whether you're in the office, whether you're in an incubator, they must be free from all forms of violence, which include also exploitation within the workplace, which the ILO 190 talks about. That is the International Labour Organization. There's the 190 Convention, which talks about protecting people from violence in the workplace. Are our SMEs actually protecting women and men from violence in the workplace, particularly sexual harassment in the workplace? And are the barriers free from negative cultural belief and practices, which then ensure that certain people cannot participate in certain areas, particularly in the agricultural sector? Certain negative cultural beliefs and practices ensure that many women are not participating in those particular spaces because you're told if you do this, it is a curse. If you do this, it's a taboo. If you do this, it is this. Yet, when you come to other cultural spaces, it is something which women participate in. We'd like to know if those ones also appear. And then when we look at this one, it is something which we are saying that our work looks at investing in women is smart economics. Investing in girls and catching them upstream is even smarter economics. This is by Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is the Director General of the World Trade Organization. So who are we investing in if you're talking about women SMEs? Who are we mentoring to come after us? So that then we are also going to say that in the next generation, there'll be many other SMEs who are participating at different levels. And there will be sustainable spaces where women entrepreneurs are mentoring the other generation to be able to participate on this. This is something which then I want us to think about as we go back to ask those other questions which we had asked previously about your access, your landscape, and how then things can be done differently. Thank you very much. Any questions, so that then we go back to that other one, the other question where we left, to see how, whether you're participating and what we can do differently from the different countries where we come.
It's really very enlightening. Okay, it's very interesting. It's really, you know, when you talk about the how gender the behavior landscape of you know, inside the workplace, in the workplace, and etc. And you were mentioning about the culture, you see, and you also mentioned about how women should behave, and how we can be on this place, because this is what we need. And thank you for giving this all very clearly. And I really wish that this, because this fellowship, as Okech mentioned, that to make you up, that without SME, without financial independency, you just be the second in the second row all the time. So this fellowship encourage you to be a leader, and the leader should have financial independency. And this is one of the important course that you can learn more from the expertise, with the expertise of Okech. Please, anybody, without your active participation, that this course will be nothing. So thank you, Okech, because Radian will be here soon. After Radian, sorry, I take your time, but sharing this experience is very important. Okay, go ahead. Anybody?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Okech. And I have learned so many things from your presentation. And it just makes me to think, how is the situation with women with disabilities? How often are they accepted into these spaces whereby they are allowed to access these financial well, you see, like for example, I'm just thinking of a woman who is deaf, for example, and they need to go to these banks or this institution to access these things. And you know, there was a time we had some of these organizations, they came to do a report on what they were able to achieve on the Women Enterprise Fund and others. And it was evident through their research, it was evident that many women with disabilities were left out, and majority of them, the main challenge which they had, it's only the challenge of communication, because you find that these offices are there, but there are no sign language interpreters, there are no any materials written in braille for women who are blind. So thank you so much. And just like what our colleague have just said, who came on, and it's true, we are leaders and we are here so that we can learn and we go back to our communities and drive the change that we want to see women in these spaces, to see women are included, and to see that the voice of women is heard in each and every corner of these things, especially when it comes to financial stability. So thank you so much, okay.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Okech, your mic is muted.
Oh, thank you. I see Dr. Unsa and NJ who have their hands up. I could be able to contribute. You could say who you are, then you're going to continue so that we know. Thank you. NJ or Dr. Jamshed?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Angelani from a rural area in Indonesia. It's called Manak City, South Bengkulu. So it's kind of a small town in rural area. And first of all, I'd like to I would like to thank you so much for so many key takeaways from this kickoff meeting. I really appreciate that Nora's the Women's Institute already holds this fellowship program. And what I want to share is the case in the rural area, like in my hometown. So actually, it has been trend that many women already become leader in their SMEs program or SMEs what do we call that? Their SMEs. And we understand that the government already provides many access to credit through initiatives like KUR or Kredit Usaha Rakyat. But the thing is, due to limited low or limited literacy ability, most of the leaders there, they do not really have a clear access to this kind of KUR or Kredit Usaha Rakyat. And sometimes they also have having some kind of problems with some permissions to issue to get permission from the government to start their SME and something like that. So what you can share from maybe something from Kenya, like what actually the government should do to give more access to this kind of limited literacy ability leaders so they can access this program from the government. Thank you.
Thank you. I can take the next one from Dr. Unsa, then I will answer. I can take 3, then I will answer the same. And Sabah, my apologies. You told me to slow down. If there's anything which you'd like me to repeat, I will be able to repeat.
Assalamu alaikum, madam. How are you? Thank you. So, can you hear me, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much for giving such a wonderful lecture. I have learned new things from your lecture. And I'm from Pakistan, and in Pakistan, the overall population of women is almost 51%. Women are more than male in Pakistan, and their economic participation is obviously very important to uplift the economy of the country. In Pakistan, there are obviously if women are economically not strengthened, I guess they are not second in the country, but they are second at their own home. You have told different ways through which we can also strengthen ourselves and empower ourselves economically and uplift the economy of not ourselves economically ourselves uplifted, but also we can also boost our economy of our state. Thank you so much for giving such a wonderful lecture.
Thank you very much. Is there any other? Then I will answer the first round of comments and questions. Okay, thank you very much. You can lower your hand so that we know whether it's a new hand or an old hand if you have been answered. But one of the things which we are looking at is that the issues of rural access, it's a challenge in many countries. And it's not different from where I come from. So part of what we're looking at, the issues of rural access to resources and knowledge, is something which then can be engaged upon. And then the issues of low literacy levels, which then ensures that people do not get access to information, or even when the forms which come for them to fill to participate in access to resources, they're then unable to do it. One of the things which is happening right now in terms of the issues of limited access is that there's an attempt to ensure that the structured levels of government are able to engage with people at the community level. So through what is called public participation, if it's a public resource from government, one of the things which Kenya does is that there's a public participation process, and in the different structured avenues, which include at the village unit, there needs to be a village elder or a village officer who is supposed to holistically, without any discrimination, serve members of the community with any information which comes from government. Of course, it does not work as it should be. There are still some challenges, but those structures have been put in place. And when you're looking at the issues of the low literacy levels, it is also important for us to invest in the issues of education, even at the most rural level. Within this, the space is investing in adult literacy classes. So how do we think of how then we can also think of engaging the women within these rural communities in literacy classes? Sometimes it's a challenge because other spaces have limitations. For example, if you talk about the limitations which women in Afghanistan had in accessing education and knowledge, but breaking those particular barriers is possible. And how then do we look at engaging people in adult literacy classes within their own informal groups? Because when people are meeting, there's a way in which when women meet in their different spaces, you can utilize those spaces to teach them how to learn, to engage at different levels, and also to encourage the people who then give these services to do more outreach at that particular level. It is something which can take time, but it is possible to be able to engage in. It's also good to look at what is best practice at different levels. What we talked about earlier in Kenya, there's what is called the access to government procurement opportunities, where women from rural communities, women with disability are encouraged to apply. And it is the law. So what we are looking at is that what does your policy state about access to opportunities? And if it says that at least 1/3 of all these public procurement opportunities must be given to the community, that is something which then we look at. So then we need to track. And then looking at the issues of using the numbers who are at the different levels. If you have many people in the terms of the numbers, how are we transforming our numbers into voice? That is a challenge which is political for many of the countries where we are in, because you have many numbers who vote in people, but because of inadequate or is it inadequate political participation or inadequate political knowledge amongst the women who vote at different levels, then sometimes it is challenging to ensure that government actually then brings resources to you at that community level. So those are some of the things which we want to think about. Political education to ensure that access to information is there in the informal sector, access to services, including quality education for all, and ensuring that we leave no one behind when we are talking about the issues of quality education. So in quality education, how much is government investing in? As an institute, we celebrated a huge conference on talking about the issues of SDGs in September. So when we are looking at what we are celebrating, we need to be able to utilize that knowledge which we gained from our conference and look at if that knowledge can be shared at the lower levels on how to access quality education, on how to challenge government to ensure services reach communities. Then we shall be able to ensure that education, access to resources, on access to services will reach, but we can also challenge when it doesn't reach us as women, and also when it doesn't reach women with the different identities at different levels, and particularly for women who are in rural communities and women with disability. This is something which can be done, but we need to think about how to be intentional about it. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
Okay, probably I can answer the question which they are asking about. Is financial independence? You know, it's akin to power for women in politics and leadership roles. I would say that yes. Why we need this financial independence? Because at least you don't have I have to explain what is financial independence and what is the SME, woman in SMEs means. If you are depending your financial, you don't have to go out just to get the financial independence. But at least you can do it even though you are at home. If you are concerning that you have to leave the home for a certain, because you have a baby, you still have this. That's why we have, now we have the for the maternal leave, we have other policy. That is why Nuraa Women Institute is encouraging women to stand, to be a leader, to more participation in politics, because everything, we need more women to be in the public policy, to make the policy. At least women thinks themselves at the end, at last, not the first one. So why we said financial independence is important. So you don't have to ask sometimes, of course, sometimes you've been given by your spouses, but you need to have some money. I'm a politician and I cannot depend on anybody. If I keep asking, because we spend the whole bunch of money in politics, I mean, for your campaign, for your, for the campaign and for your activity in the politics. But when you get there, they will give you, of course, you get the money when you are sitting as a member of parliament or whatever. But still, to reach there, you need financial independence. So this is why we have this Nuraa Women Institute Fellowship. So, and for the Indonesia one, that if I'm not mistaken, from Bengkulu, I mean that, and we do have Nuraa Women Business Forum, which we can, we were having, like Okech mentioned, international conference. We have a lot of network in the banking. So for KUR, we will assist you. Please come to the office, or you can send us anything, ask the question, then we will assist you for that to get the KUR. Okay, and thank you. Okay, go ahead. Hello. Hello. Does anybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ibu. That's very awesome. So, when is it again, this agenda?
Which agenda? For Nuraa Women Business Forum's festival?
Yes.
Yes, from the 30th to 3rd of November.
Okay. 3 November.
In the Jakarta Convention Center.
All right. No, 3.
So yes, you can join this community also, Anne,
Yes, Ibu.
because it's open for you. Okay.
Definitely, Ibu. Thank you so much, Ibu.
My pleasure. Go ahead. Okay.
When somebody was, one of our participants asked about the challenge of innovation and technology, and I've just experienced the issues of drop down and slow network and engagement. So part of it is that it is a challenge within all our different communities, and it also then ensures that access to information and knowledge sometimes is also a challenge. And when you're talking about the issues of access to resources and how it interferes with people's political participation, governments at different levels have ensured there's investment so that women in politics, through political parties, are able to access resources. So it's also important for us to be able to start asking political parties, in whatever political party that you are in, how then do we engage with political parties to ensure that they invest so that there's less exploitation of women in political spaces, and that investment is also, the return on investment is because what you bring to the party. There's a question, I can see there's a question from El Khalil from Mali, or a comment?
Yeah. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. We can hear you.
Okay, I'm Mohammed Abdel Khalil from Mali, and I have a contribution for the question relatives of financing, women access financing. And in the West Africa today, to support women in having access to financing, I think we need to set up funds to support projects carried out by women without interest. Just as we have fund to support youth initiative, we have a lot of initiative to help young people to have or to access financing of a project. Why we don't build or open a department for women at financing access? There are two vulnerable targets, women and young. And access to financing for women will lead us to a more just and stable and a more developing society. And women must get involved again in politics to occupy decision making, and the parliament or the government to be minister or to be deputy chief, to occupy decision making position to open the door of financing to other women, especially those in rural area, the women in the rural area. It's very, very important because she work very, very hard, and she don't going to school, or she have any opportunity to have access for the financing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very important in terms of how then having women in political spaces also influence access to resources. This is very important because it unlocks different spaces, but also having women in political processes who are then trained to also respond to the needs of women is something which is very key, because we note that patriarchy, which then is an oppressive space, sometimes ensures that just because I'm a woman does not mean that I will respond to the needs of women at the different levels. So how to then ensure that we are able to deal with these particular retrogressive practices and have more women in leadership who are trained to respond to the needs of the different units of the community is very key. And this one is possible. We have seen that if we had women in, for example, central banks, will they change the policy frameworks of how then the rate of borrowing, for example, can be within the different spaces? If you had women who are finance ministers, are they able to ensure that they occupy the spaces and open up spaces for SMEs to thrive, and also have different categories of SMEs thriving at different levels, and how they can give concession for women in different economies to be able to participate? Thank you very much. Any other comment or question?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Sisri. Can I ask you a question? It's
Yes.
probably your experience as well. I'm sorry. I'm wondering about as you stated earlier also that women there also empowered by technology, communication and information, and how due to your experience, how do you empower them by using this ICT for the semester? Sorry, my doctor. I think that's all. Thank you. I'm looking forward to hear your experience, especially about a woman in a rural area using the ICT for this maze. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is part of what we look at, participation of women and also unpaid care work, which then enables us to participate at different levels, and the multiple tasks which women have to also engage in. Technology in Kenya, for example, has been an enabler. That is what we can say. That it's been an enabler in the sense that the cost of doing business using technology for a long time has been reduced, and that the high costs of taxes on, let's say, what is called airtime which is used is something which has enabled people to work. So at all parts of Kenya, you can pay for your services online, and you can be able to communicate with people online. So that means that even if I'm in where I am right now is in the lakeside, in a place called Kisumu in Kenya, if I wanted to even speak to someone in the northeast part of Kenya to be able to engage with me, the use of technology has facilitated this process, because then you have the financial pockets which then can be able to pay for staff, and for you to be able to get those goods and services through public transport. And that means that the public transport systems also can tell you whether someone has deposited your parcel, when the person said they've deposited your parcel. And as soon as your parcel even arrives, then the technology is also assisting to tell you that your parcel has arrived, come and pick it up. So technology is a good enabler for businesses to be done. We want to check if the cost also of the technology is also something which affects. In Kenya, there's going to be some increased costs in using technology, which might affect businesses, but then it will ensure that still you can still do business. So those increased costs is why we are saying that we need to look at the issues of the finance and tax regime to ensure that taxes are not levied to then increase the costs of doing business. So it also then ensures that as women who are in SMEs, are we members of business associations, for example, as we can see that as an institute, that we are also part of processes where we are having membership as women in business who can then negotiate with government. So at the different levels, it is important that at the lowest unit where business associations exist, we must train women who are even from the informal sector to be part of these associations, so that then they can negotiate with government when some certain tax regimes will interfere with their access to technology, which can ensure that they can get mobile banking and mobile facilities at different levels. So as we go ahead, how do we then be part of processes which are not discriminative, so that even if you're at the lowest end of Pakistan, for example, you can still be able to communicate with the person at the city, the most bustling city in Pakistan, and exchange goods and services and ensure that it reaches. That can only be done if government also invests in the infrastructure so that technology can also be there. So it is important for us to look at how governments are also investing in technology and investing in infrastructure, which then ensures that information can reach at different levels. But if government is not doing the same, there have been other spaces which in terms of how government is tracking certain things, it can be difficult, but it is a very good way to ensure that you utilize it to do this. Thank you. I can see Keita, Mariam. Please unmute.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Madam, thank you very much for your good speech. My name is Mariam Keita. I'm a young leader in Mali. I want to contribute. Okay? Women are very active. Women are very active in the Malian economy, but most of the time they work in the informal sector, and they have little support from the state. So the efforts of women is small and medium-sized. Business economy very invisible. I will list the small income generating activities: the manufacture and the sale of soaps, agriculture, livestock breeding, agro-food processing, featuring my association five of lot for the empowerment of women. For a good political participation, Mali need a financial base. I'm very happy for this speech because my five is a woman finance economy in the Africa, in the Sahel, and in the Mali. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. And bye. There is Taki Kante, also from Mali.
Okay, hi everyone, and thank you so much, Easter Achieng, for this brilliant presentation. And I have to say that we've really learned a lot. And thank you everyone, Dr. Nurayati and everyone. So as you all said before, Mali is a developing country in West Africa, which economy is essentially based on the informal sector. As said earlier, it is based on 96% on the informal sector and is driven by the primary and secondary sectors. So women are actually formidable players in this economy, but they are confronted to a number of challenges, such as socio-cultural barriers and difficult access to education. So there are few initiatives in the political area. For example, we have a law that is called the Loi numéro 2015-052. It's the law number 2015-052, instituting measures to promote gender in access to nominative and elective functions. But Dr. Nurayati said something very important, like the access to resources is the key. So it's really difficult. What I see here in a context where public initiatives to promote women in SMEs are very low. So what I see here is that women are trying to organize themselves by setting up tontines. This is a system in which the women put a fixed amount into a fund on a periodic basis, and at each meeting, one of them collects the contributions, and this helps women to start small businesses on a daily basis. So this is a little contribution, and I also have a little question for you. So how do you think, which action should we take to facilitate the access of rural women to financial resources? Because they are the most vulnerable and they also constitute the majority of the population. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Wisa, is that an old ad or a new one?
Madam, can I proceed, because I have the same question as the previous one asked. Actually, in Pakistan, there are two professions that are called to be very prestigious, teaching and doctor. And the other profession, if we are going to opt, we have to face certain problems and certain challenges. Even I'm teaching at a women university, and in women university, we have cafeteria that was run by males. So when we are going to start our own businesses, we have faced social challenges. So what do you suggest how we will overcome these challenges, please?
Thank you very much. I will start answering on the challenges which women face because of cultural and also social barriers. One of the things which has happened in the different spaces is that in certain programs which we have handled, where there's discrimination because of who you are and because of the cultural ties with the community you come from we have done what is called a gender equality and social inclusion analysis. And the gender equality and social inclusion analysis within businesses ensures that you look at the roles of how people participate and how then the exclusion of certain people from the economy ensures that that economy does not thrive. Because if you're looking at how women participate and looking at how unpaid care work is done. So when you look at, even when you're talking about women contributing to work, one of the things which the Bureau of Statistics in our country, it shows that unpaid care work, if costed, shows that women contribute holistically to that. So that means that within our different countries, we need to have a push to have data and evidence that shows that the contribution of women, whether you are at the household level for unpaid care work, but particularly the contribution of the informal sector. The informal sector runs our economies. The amount of resources that the informal sector pays is something which we have to look at very keenly. And that is why many revenue authorities are now targeting the informal sector, because the informal sector thrived even during many pandemics, because that is where people could afford to go and purchase a lot of stuff. So the recognition of the informal sector is something which slowly governments are coming to engage on. And it is important for us to then, for those who are coming from the informal sector, to ensure that we form strong alliances. The challenge within the informal sector still is that whilst women are many in these informal sectors, the leadership within the informal sectors who then represent women's work in the informal sectors are usually male. So when you look at, I'll take for any market area where these are full of women who sell different stuff in different markets. Usually you'll find that the market leader who then meets with the local council or then eventually meets with the local government authority is usually a male person. And that means that the issues of women in terms of the investment which is required sometimes is not able to reach the different authorities. But it is also important for us to also think of, as we look at how then we are getting represented within the political space, it is important for us to engage women in the formal sector to also sit with those in the formal businesses, or those which are not called informal. Because when we are looking at all of them, they're contributing to the GDP of the economy. And we cannot exclude certain people who are also being charged, because in all market areas, they're charged a tax for you to open your stall every day. So part of it is the re-education of women in informal sectors to also know that they're contributors to the GDP of the particular country where they come from. So how we then look at how then we can also just do a small analysis and check that how much do the women in different spaces contribute to this GDP? When you know how much money you bring into your country, then we'll have bigger voices. It's just that we do not know that the informal sector runs many of the countries where we come from. So what I can recommend is that can we also within our different countries start organizing ourselves into different spaces to use the data on what our contribution is to the economy, to also look at the return on our investment in our countries. That is something which then can be done. And this one, once it is done, then you will be sitting on those tables deciding on the investment which government needs to put in, for example, your markets, on investments which government needs to put in the infrastructure on where you get into your different spaces, and on the investment in which then the state recognizes that you're an able contributor to the economy where you come from. So if an economy is informal sector of 96%, then that means that you drive the country. And if we don't acknowledge that you drive the country, that the other 4% are the only ones who drive the country, then it is what is called political education, which the Dr. Nuraa can be able to talk to us about. So if you're able to look at how then we are engaging, what is our political education on what we contribute at this particular level? What is our political education on how then we can talk about the sector approach and how our sectors contribute to the economy? If you are able to teach women on table banking, for example, and how table banking contributes to their households, and how then this one shows up the household incomes. Then we can also teach ourselves to get the data, which shows that the informal sectors actually carries the country. Thank you.
Yes, okay. I would love to add something, because but before I add something, I really want to hear Nusrat Siddiq. Are you still there?
Hello, ma'am. Yes,
Yes,
I'm here.
yes. Because you were asking and I was answering your question. What do you
Yeah.
think and anything that you want to say, please?
Yeah, actually, I was asking the question, is financial independence akin to the power regarding the women in leadership roles? And my question was regarding because most of the women do not take much interest in politics, maybe due to the gender bias, or they are shy, or traditional or cultural things back in their minds. So this is something that needs to be, people are not aware much.
That's true. That's true.
Especially women.
Yeah. That's true, especially when it's very interesting when we learn from Mali, like Okech said that 96% it's from informal sector, which they are mentioning about women are in informal sector. So this is really, how do you say, it's really sad to hear that because women are in formal sector and the visa or whatever that the economic is from the informal sector. So women should I don't know how many percent of women in the power in the Mali, yeah, because I know it's they're still learning, but this is the chance for you to learn in Nuraa Women Institute. We give you this fellowship.
Yeah.
And this is it's really free of charge, and the speaker are terribly great, their expertise. So you have to be here and actively involved and change your mind, to change your attitude from now on. You learn from the beginning. Now this is the SMEs, so try to understand and try to make it in your life. So you have to start changing your mind, telling yourself that you are different from now on. Your fellowship, you get the fellowship. Not everybody get this chance. Many of them are rejected, so you are lucky. So you have to have in mind, I'm happy, Nusrat, you are saying this. Woman, that is why we have this fellowship, because we want to encourage more woman participation in politics and leadership. If we have more women, and women will take woman, another woman. Like when I was the leader of my political party, I always lift up women. Because, and don't compete with a man. Make a man as your parity, gender parity. So as your partners, strategic partners, do not competing each other. You are not, this is what you have to learn from Nuraa Women Institute, from these fellows. But you have to have the eager to lead, at first you have to lead yourself before you lead others. This is the most important here. Okay, Nusrat, and I wish that with this very great lecturer from Okech, then please start thinking, changing yourself from now on. You have the chance to do for yourself. And Nuraa Women Institute will see you there as leaders of the country, not only leaders of your community.
Right.
And thank you, Okech, for a very enlightening lecture. Okay, anyone that's Okech not answering yet, or I can answer probably.
Yeah, ma'am, I have another question regarding the SMEs. For example, if women is some women who are in small these SMEs, how do you see those who are in conflict? For instance, like you said that they need to have this independence, financial things. But when something is married by conflict, how do you see that?
What is your question? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I need to understand the question. Is it on SMEs for people in conflict, or is it women who have conflict at different levels?
At different levels, ma'am, in conflict as well as with different conflicts. For example, there's a violence going on currently in the world or here in Kashmir. How do you see those women in SMEs?
Yes. I think one of the conversations we've had as an institute is also to look at what happens to women who are living in conflict situations and what needs to be done. Yeah. We have very clear resolutions at the UN, Resolution 1325, which looks at how protection of economic empowerment for people in conflict, particularly women in conflict, is supposed to be done. And how then different countries who are experiencing conflict should ensure that conflict is not there, so that the issues of peace negotiations are supposed to be done. But also, apart from peace negotiations being done, we have to look at the aftermath of conflict in business, conflict in households and within communities, and then what needs to be done in reparation. We are at a challenging state in the world because of the world politics. The geopolitics has ensured that at certain levels, targeted conflict has destroyed economies which used to thrive. And this is part of what then with Dr. Nuraa, who has been also at a high level of politics, will contribute to what do we need to look at the geopolitics and what do we need to talk about at the international political levels. So that when you're talking about with the UN women, what are the UN women, for example, who are at that apex of representation, speaking about the impact of conflict on businesses for women and within their household. This is something which is important for us to speak about. And so that when we want to celebrate, for example, all these international days, then we can be able to speak about at different levels. So that is something which then we can talk about. But Dr. Nuraa, if you can be able to add to this.
Thank you, Okech. I think that it's perfect because I just want to say that always a conflict everywhere, you see, but I believe that woman is the best peacemaker, you know, so when woman, that is why we encourage more women to sit as a decision-making level. So when women more in the decision-making level, the conflict will be finished. Am I right or wrong? So let's do it starting from this. And men are also here.
Right.
Yeah. There's a hand from Sabah Gulam. Did we answer or it's an old hand?
Assalamu alaikum, ma'am.
Alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
Okay. Ma'am, I'm from Pakistan administrated Kashmir. I have a question. The female population and literacy rate, in my area is higher than men. But women's empowerment is almost non-existent. There is an government institution, namely women development, but it is somehow administered by men. This institution only provides financing for women for poultry, stitching and embroidery work, and even that is through a slow process. So in this scenario, what women can do or contribute?
What we have to also learn is the power of labor movements, because women in SMEs belong to the labor movements, and how to organize ourselves into movements which then are able to challenge discrimination. So one of the things is that we have looked at different labor movements. How strong are your labor movements? And how strong are your business associations, which then support the work of women? I will talk about one movement in Kenya, which then encompasses how women in manufacturing, for example, are able to engage. So this one is led by an association called the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. And out of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, there are the women who are in business who then participate under the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. And because there are many and they contribute to this particular association, their voices are usually heard and they're able to engage on different issues so that then when they're having challenges, they're able to engage. And so that the question that we want to ask you is that how many of your associations for women who are in business exist? Apart from that one, there is the Chamber of Commerce, for example. How many are you members of the Chamber of Commerce? And how then do you want to ensure that apart from just having the role of representation of women in the Chamber of Commerce, you can also have representation in different categories of leadership in the Chamber of Commerce? So if we start having those are the political spaces which then you are able to negotiate, you're able to then start disrupting how business is run. So it is important for us to also think that in the country where you come from, are you a member of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers? Are you a member of the Chamber of Commerce? Are you a member of the informal sector alliances? And if there are more women in those particular spaces and that they are trained to become leaders in those particular spaces, then you will find that you are able to start influencing certain things in those particular spaces. In fact, it will be a quiet way of engaging, and very soon your visibility will be seen. So when you talk about the political engagement, it is important to start having political engagement by being members, then looking at the leadership positions and being elected in those leadership positions within those associations, and then also then within the political space. And that means that you'll be able to challenge as a leader when you're elected there, or as a member, because member voices are loud, that then the different things which need to be invested in will also change. So this is part of a process which has worked in Kenya, where I come from, and it has ensured that silent voices across Kenya are now having representation, and those representation is ensuring that businesses are allocated at different levels.
Excuse me, can I add something, Ma'am Nuraa?
I think this is going to be the last one because due to the time constraint. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. This is going to be
If
the
you
last
just
one.
allow me, I'll just take 1 minute.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Dr. Shurukta Ashraf, and I'm from Azad Kashmir. Recently, one of the participants mentioned that in Pakistan administered Kashmir, there is only one department, that is Women Development Department, and that is also administered by male. So I just want to clarify a few things regarding the opportunities and the resources being available for women of Azad Kashmir. It's a government department which is definitely, the human resources come from different competitive exams, and those who compete can only join the department. So those who will be on merit, they can definitely only join the department. So definitely if women are not competing in that department, they won't be able to join that. So this is not only just one department. We have a lot of other departments as well as National Support, NRSP, National Rural Support Program. Then we have State Bank of Pakistan's particularly different programs for women, and special quota is available in all the banks present in Pakistan administered Kashmir, where if women would apply for getting the loan, they will get more chances to, go for the loans, and on less interest rate, just to, motivate women that they can come in this sector, small and medium enterprises. So the problem is that as one of the participants just mentioned that the literacy rate and the population is 51% and all that. So the issue is women are more living in the rural areas. So there is a challenge that the education and the information which needs to be disseminated to them is limited because of the certain political issues and governmental barriers and resources and all that. Because in developing countries you can see that government alone cannot contribute a lot to all the sectors. So in that case, the problem which needs to be addressed is to find out what are the possible resources and opportunities available. There are a lot of opportunities there for women. The problem is only that in rural areas, women are reluctant to get information or something like uh, uh, getting education. So less education is the issue which the women in the rural areas are going through. Uh, so I think that the solution of this particular problem is that there should be more, educational campaigns regarding what kind of programs government is offering to the general public or different private sector is, because banks are there, different microfinancing is
Sorry,
there, not
ma'am, can
only.
you make it short, please? The time is finished. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think the end is conclusion is that there are opportunities, just to there's a need to explore them.
Thank you very much. I'll now hand it over, but we have learned that there's so many opportunities. And I think as Nuraa Women's Institute, we can map and ensure that we share those opportunities at different levels for people to learn. Thank you, and thank you for being part of this particular wonderful process.
Thank you.
Asante.
Thank you. We would like to thank you for Mrs. Okech for the extraordinary enlightenment and then for the presentation and the discussion. There is a lot of things we can learn from this material, and then maybe we can implement it in the future. Thank you so much also for the participants who are participating in this discussion and in this lessons. And I would like to ask everybody to open their camera for group picture for one last time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahadian, for your very good moderator taking place from Dr. Rifki. We appreciate so much. We are so proud of you, and we are happy to have you with us. Next time too, wish. Okay.
Thank you so much for Mrs. Okech. And we would like to thank you again for Mrs. Okech, and thank you everyone.
Wait, before, sorry, Mr. Radian. Sorry, Radian, that we have another announcement that which I forgot. The next session will be on the November 8th for the leadership session. Sorry, I forgot to let you know about this. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
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 Next.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's meet again next session. See ya.